as regards to language, I did not find a difficulty. But speaking of the Kissinger's side, what was difficult is his pronunciation. Difficult to hear, to understand him.
But his ideas were clear enough.
Yes.
Did you work in consecutive, taking notes?
Taking notes.
Or did you present it sentence by sentence?
Sentence by sentence.
Did you feel, as you were working, that you could distance yourself from the process and just be the interpreter? Or were you in fact very much involved also personally and engaged in the process?
As an interpreter, we must act as not being involved in the negotiation, but as Vietnamese, then we must pay attention to the content of the idea and how to express the idea clearly and not an word-to-word interpretation, but we must express it in a so-called English way to be not to be very peculiar or queer, because on the American side there was also an interpreter who spoke Vietnamese.
And did he interpret as well for the American delegation, or did you do all the work?
For some time at the beginning, I was interpreted for both sides. But after some time, because the meeting lasted very long, therefore we proposed to the American side that the interpretation should be done by each side. Then I had to translate for the Vietnamese side and not for the American side.
Did you feel that was an improvement in your working conditions?
Yes.
And did you feel that it was an improvement also in the understanding, or did it work better when you were doing both ways?
Yes, because the American interpreter interpreted from English into Vietnamese.
I see.
Yes.
And you worked from Vietnamese into English?
Into English.
I suppose you were part of the first talks from 1968 and onwards.
From the very beginning.
Including Kissinger's secret missions.
Yes.
How did you perceive the situation as an interpreter? Was it particularly difficult from the interpretation point of view?
Certainly it was difficult, because you see, interpretation is a difficult job, but interpretation for negotiation conference, it is all the more difficult, because it is political matters and the position of each side. We must grasp it to interpret correctly, because our interpretation may be wrong in terms of the meaning, the nuances of the word used. But at the time when I was doing the job, I did not think about the difficulty, but I think more of the content of the interpretation, because I was not being trained to be interpreter, but how to express Le Duc's views. It was my main occupation then.
What kind of a politician was Le Duc? Was he very practical, or was he very conceptual in his expression of his ideas?
No, his expression was very simple, clear, and understandable. Not complicated. But sometimes I found it difficult to find the corresponding word in English. This is difficult. For myself, I don't feel difficulty in connection with language. I could speak easily because, you see, I began to interpret in 1946-47 for the International Commission on Liaison Mission. And the Paris Conference was in 1968, it began. I think that at every session, it is not only the question of language, but it is a question of content of the idea. How to express the idea in a clearly and understandably for the other side. Therefore, the words were chosen carefully and not to misinterpret.
In the actual conference, was it only Kissinger and Le Duc Tho speaking, or did you have other people who?
No, only two.
Only two. And when you look at Kissinger as a negotiator, did he strike you as an effective one, or did he have difficulties in understanding the Vietnamese position?
No, I think that he understood the Vietnamese position through me, and he relied on me. He did not question my ability or my English or my expression and so on. I think that it was an exciting job to be interpreter at the Paris conference. Just so. I did not think about the importance of the job. It was a work allotted by the Foreign Ministry. I had to fulfill this job in the best of my ability. That's all. And moreover, it was a long past, long ago, when I was interpreting in the Paris conference. I was only 40, 41, 42. It was long ago. Many things have been forgotten now. Actually, I was not trained to be an interpreter. I made my study. I finished my study, and the war broke out. I joined the army, and when I came back, my job was to interpret for the liaison mission of the PAVN to the International Commission for the implementation of the Geneva Agreement. Then I continue to work in the liaison mission of the PAVN with the International Commission. And then the war against the US began. I was transferred to the Foreign Ministry, and I became an interpreter there. When the Paris Agreement began, I was sent to Paris to interpret for this conference between Kissinger and Le Duc Tho for 5 years. When the Paris Agreement was concluded and signed, then I finished my job as an interpreter. I returned to the Foreign Ministry, and was in charge of the interpretation for the foreign ministry. I left the foreign service in 1992 after being posted to the North European countries. If I have something to tell the people who aspire to be interpreters, I would tell them that it is not an easy job. It requires a lot of effort on the part of the interpreter. They must study a lot and a lot of practice